Hello. Good morning. I know, Tim. Thursdays are challenging. It's because you know Wednesday is hump day. You're like, come on, let's get past Wednesday. You get to Thursday, and it's just like, well, it just feels like another Wednesday, really. Thank you for tuning in. I'm feeling quite optimistic today. I like words, as you've probably imagined. We're going to be playing some word games. We've got two typing games, speed typing games, which I'm going to be terrible at, especially with the kind of observer effect that you kind of get embarrassed and flustered and when people are watching. So I'm going to have a bad time playing two typing games, and I think the other one is more of a word creation, word puzzle. So feeling good about this. Just need to put the capture back on. Sorry about that. And it's kind of a genre of game that I personally really like. Particularly word making games rather than typing games, but I like, word based games generally. But because of the way that the streams work and that I try and put things related together, it's been a while until I've kind of stored up enough games to have three to play at the same time. And even then, we've had to mix kind of typing games with word making puzzles. So I'm looking forward to this. Thank you for sending them in, devs. If you're in the chat, I'm kind of excited about this type of games I like. I've been playing a lot of this recently. I've been playing the mobile version of it, but this is like Balatro Scrabble, Bertigo. Seems to be a quite team of two. Only recently learned that there's a version of it on Steam as well. But I've been playing a lot of this, and one of the things that I found really interesting about word creation games like word puzzles like Spellsy and the one that Mark Brown made recently is I suppose this is kind of obvious because it's implicit in the spelling of Scrabble as well, but just like the way that the language creates the difficulty. And obviously, it's not a very fun type of game if you don't enjoy kind of knowing and learning lots of new words. But I find it interesting in terms of stuff like, the mechanical difficulty in Vertigo for me has been learning new words that start with J, because J is one of the rare letters that is quite hard to use in a word. It doesn't usually occur in the middle of a word in the English language. It's nearly always used for starting French loan words like jovial and stuff like that. So it's like it's this letter that we seem to only have for using in words that we borrowed from the French, and and that kind of just creates a unique type of difficulty, which kind of reminds me that I need to maybe use that as an example, because the next video essay we do on this channel is going to be about difficulty. I'm going to literally take a note on that now because I'll forget otherwise. But yeah, games can have different sources of difficulty, and I think making a word game introduces this interesting thing where the difficulty comes from just an unusual place. And those of you who design puzzles will have thought about this kind of stuff. And if you've ever done an escape room, or you've been involved in like escape room culture, like seeing how people talk about um, it's seeing how people talk about like whether a puzzle was fair because it involved outside knowledge, and what constitutes outside knowledge, and how do you decide like what type of elements in a puzzle are stuff that anyone should know versus like something that's exclusionary. Stuff like that is it's an interesting challenge. And when you've got puzzles where you need to make words, that's another one, because you just people come to a game with a vocabulary, and unless your game has a way of like gradually showing people what the other possible answers were, you don't learn them. And I found this, and when I used to play Words with Friends and Scrabble, you learn all these little two-letter words like "et" and stuff like that, and the game never tells you what they mean. It'd be really great if, when you were trying to brute force a word game and you just put random letters in until it gives you a right answer, if it kind of told you what that word meant, because often it doesn't, so you never actually you never retain the knowledge that that's a word. um Vish, that's a great idea. A game about English word origins, French versus German versus Greek versus Latin. You could do like a Crusader Kings map, like an etymology, war of etymology, grand strategy, Crusader Kings map. Like, where does the word come from? Um, yeah. Yeah, I also live with at least one dyslexic. And then I've got the ADHD thing of just like being bad at spelling because I'm not paying attention. Um, but the English language is, my daughter is 11 now, so she has to do loads of little spelling tests for school. And the English language is just horrible because there are so many words that you have to just learn because we don't have any consistent rules, because we have like 4 or 5 loan languages, because the history of my country is just being invaded by a new set of people every 500 years, and like the language morphing, which is cool, but it's also just led to our language just being a horrible thing that has really inconsistent rules. So we're not playing Bertigo, but that is what I've been drilling myself on, and that's why I know quite a few 7-letter words that start with J now, which is quite good. Quite good. We are checking out. Spellsy is the one that's actually a kind of word puzzle. We're doing something like connecting things on a grid, but there seems to be some sort of gravity element as well, which is very, very interesting. And I'm loving all the juice that I see here. And I love the fact that they've taken, like, just as a first impression, I love the fact that we've got, a very abstract type of game, and the theming around it is just beautiful. And whether or not all of these art assets are from Eurolemon games or whether they've come from some sort of asset pack, it just looks incredibly consistent. And if this was a village in some sort of like magic fantasy game, then these tiles would fit right into, if that was like a Zelda or something that we're seeing around here, these tiles would still fit totally into that game as like a magic item, like a trap or a rune thing that you step on in a dungeon, but they've been used here as part of the word game, and I just think that's really cute, really great creative direction. Whether the pixel art is made in-house or whether it's got taken from elsewhere, this is just so consistent. Really nice, consistent color palette. As I flick through these, I'm not seeing tons and tons of variation in the surrounding art, but I'm seeing stuff like, these differently coded letter tiles that are a different shape and have like a magic effect on it. So I'm seeing that we're going to get some interplay of rules between the word making and the letters. And one of the things I've really enjoyed about playing Bertigo, actually, the one I was showing you a minute ago, is that because it's Scrabble with Balatro scoring, you occasionally get scoring motivators that change what you would normally go for in a word game. Because most word games, it's like, if everything is modeled on Scrabble, we're looking at the point value of the letters and trying to make the longest word with the largest value letters in. But in Bertigo, you will get modifiers that are like jokers from Balatro that say, oh, you're going to get this multiplier if your word is 4 letters long, or even you're going to get this multiplier if your word is 2 letters long. And you can start to string the multipliers together, because you might have one multiplier for a 2-letter word, you might have one multiplier for an even number of letters words, which means you can do like a 4-letter word with some good scoring numbers in and get the even number score. But you can also do a 2-letter word and get the even number score and the 2-letter score at the same time. So it's really interesting to see how the scoring part of making the words can fit together with other rules. And here, I guess, the other rules are going to be to do with the nature of the different tiles. Maybe the different colors are significant, I don't know. But we've got like a third color here where instead of a normal Scrabble tile, we've got these kind of blue magical orbs. And again, it's all fitting into that nice theming of it feeling like a little kind of town that you would visit in between dungeons in a Zelda or something like that. And this really kind of speaks to me in how everything just feels really coherent just from looking at the Steam page, and that's kind of giving me lots of good signals. The other two are speed typing games, so I'm not going to get on as well with these. They're going to be kind of funny to watch because I'm going to mess up a lot. We'll probably play these two first, and then I'll play Spellsy to chill out afterwards. So Wordlock is, we're doing dungeon crawling action games with the frantic precision tests of typing games. Equip a variety of spells, each with their own unique effects and words to expel your foes through sheer force of your words per minute. So one of the things that I immediately think there is like, okay, we're going to be typing, and then it says you need to equip spells. So am I going to have to be doing lots of awkward moving between the keyboard and the mouse? Because that could be quite painful. And I'm sure there'll be people watching this that have played historically these typing games like Typing of the Dead and stuff, and they think, you're an amateur. You should be able to use the mouse as well. But that's the kind of thing that immediately springs to mind for me, because these games typically, it's kind of the same structure as a rhythm game or like a Guitar Hero or a Dance Dance Revolution, where the game is basically just saying this is exactly what you need to do, and it's more a test of your it's not testing you on your like judgment of the situation in the game or your situational awareness like you would be doing in most action games. It is literally just, here is an input you must give the computer, and it's more like the test is outside of the game and it's in your hands, right? Of like, how do you interact with your controller? And in this case, the controller is a keyboard, but in it could be a Rock Band guitar or whatever. I've talked a lot about how I don't generally like that stuff in games, but I think if you're going to make one of those and make it good, it all comes around to like the surrounding juice and stuff like that. There's a reason why playing SingStar feels different from just doing normal karaoke, and that's all the effort that goes into like all the VFX and the a dexterity text. When you're playing SingStar and you're singing into your PlayStation or your Wii or whatever it was, and the bar is going up, it's all about all of the kind of feedback and the juice that goes into making it feel like the game is kind of congratulating or commiserating you on your performance as you go along, rather than just doing karaoke where you just wait till the end and then people cheer, and maybe they cheer in the middle if you're really good at karaoke. I don't think we'll get the typing one on consoles. That would be... So it looks like we're using words that relate to the kind of thing that the character is doing as well, which is quite nice. So we're going to be spelling knock, voltage, volt. Had one of these recently. I think it was in our community stream. I think it was one of our Patreons, a little puzzle platformer where you jumped up to things and then you typed the word in while it went into bullet time, and you had to like find all the words in the level. That was really cool. I like the look of this. And then TypeCaster, abracadabra. Type your way to the top, harness powerful spells, uncover treasures, and lift that stupid curse of yours. We've got a lovely kind of, the sort of midway between Cult of the Lamb and Eugenics kind of pseudo 3D with very kind of Flash era looking dudes drawn on top of it. I like this. I'm always a little bit wary of monochrome games just because I find them harder to see, but I definitely find black and white ones a little bit easier to read than when it's like blue and green or something, which is what people have gone for often with these very like stylized monochromatic games. But this stands out, and that's going to be the main thing we're paying attention to. So maybe there's some kind of movement going on. They've called it a Souls-like action game, so maybe we're having to move the character and type stuff, which is going to be interesting to see how that's handled. So yeah, let's get started with TypeCaster, then we'll check out Wordlock, and then we'll check out Spellsy. And I'm just trying to get used to doing I've got a new quick key on my streaming software to clip between to start a new recording between each game, so that I've got a good clear library of each game that we play. Trying to get a bit more disciplined about that stuff, so it's easier to reference back to games that we've checked out before when we do longer videos. But yeah, trying to approach content creation in a slightly more professional way, like a full-time videographer person would, while also still making games and doing other things, is a lot. I'm still kind of working with normal computer-sized hard drives, and I haven't got to the point yet where I'm actually archiving stuff. So a lot of my old videos and my old game footage and stuff just doesn't exist because I have to flush out all of my large files every month or two. So I'm going to get one of those things that's like a... Don't know if anyone else has got one of these. Can't remember what it's called. It's like a external hard drive, but that sits on your network, and anyone on your network can just dump stuff in it. I'm going to get one of those soon. Okay. Controls. We're moving with WASD. We've got an inventory and an interact. We've got a dash. We've got a potion. We've got cast spell and spell book. And instead it's a Souls-like. I really, really hope that the spellbook lets me pause while I read it. Yeah, NAS, that's what I'm thinking of. A long time ago, evil came into our world, bringing malice and despair. This is incredibly charming already. Monsters, demons, and beasts struck fear into human hearts. But then a wizard appeared miraculously and pushed all of evil back whence they came. He then built a tower to contain the portal and stood guard. Look at that evil wizard. This is real kind of Ed McMullen style art. And I mean that in a complimentary way. But evil was still lurking in the shadows, waiting for the day they could return to power. As the Grand Wizard slowly aged, his power to control the portal weakened. Evil crept through the weakening seal, leaving him desperate for a successor. Maybe we should try and do the Darkest Dungeon voice for this one. Years went by, and not a single soul has been able to conquer the trials. Too slow. The world once again holds its breath, waiting for a new savior to rise. I must have sounded so cool, hehehe. Now then, folks, Act 1 begin. That was an incredibly charming introduction. Find something worth stealing. Ha ha ha, nailed it. I've got to love the sweet smell of today's loot. My neighbour's breakfast. Can't get enough of this worldly wealth. Foo 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 foo. Now time to hit the village and snag some goodies. I love to steal my neighbour's wealth. Find something worth stealing. Hang on. That wizard? We're going to steal something from the wizard and become a wizard. We're going to get Santa Claused, but... Wizard claused. Oldman. Hello? The main character is just called MC. That's the kind of gag that could be annoying if the whole thing wasn't charming, but because it's doing this all slightly off-kilter charming thing, it's nice. Sleeping on the street. Is he a beggar? Tsk, tsk. How's the village ever going to improve with folks like him around? Hold up. This old man's got quite the antique vibes, huh? Maybe I can snag something for him. Just a bit. Hee hee hee. We're going to steal the wizard, yeah. Wow, these clothes fit me well. They even have some stuff in the pockets. Hey, you little brat, those are mine! Oops, time to bail. You damn scoundrel, stealing from me, are you? You got guts, I'll give you that, but you ain't getting away with it. I'll curse you to the depths of hell. Hiya! Uh-oh. What just happened? Good luck removing my curse, you little rat. You ain't the Grand Wizard, so I guess you're stuck with it. Ah. That's a great setup. It's really good. And given all of my moaning about writing in games last week, one of the things that I think you can think about, if you're making a narrative game at the moment, in these first 5 minutes of this game, one of the things the writing has been focused on, and I know this is a little bit abstract, but yes, it's telling us the story of what went on, but it's also like establishing the tone of the game. Right? It's a little bit jokey, it's a little bit playful. It's not so jokey that it's fully breaking the fourth wall, although our main character is called MC, which is kind of funny. That's a little bit like is it Neil Stephenson that had the cyberpunk hero that was called Hero Protagonist? It's kind of that kind of vibe. But it's all playful, and the tone of it fits with the art style of the game, and it all feels very, very coherent and cohesive. And I think when you've got this kind of dark, childish, slightly Team Meat, slightly Tim Burton, Newgroundsy aesthetic, it's kind of easy to do this jokey, silly kind of dialogue because it just fits with the style of everything else. And I think often when I start to groan when I see loads of text and story at the start of a game, it's because of how it fits into the game and so on and so forth. You know, if someone has like a, you know, the classic one is someone comes to game development having only played very kind of serious macho AAA games like, you know, your Halos and your Diablos and your Starcrafts, and they desperately want to make this epic, dark, adult feeling science fiction or fantasy story, and all of the art assets are like that. And then when you start to read the text, it feels a little bit childish. And I think it is usually better to write something that's kind of not as smart as you are, if that makes sense. Like, it's a lot easier to make something that hits well if you're not trying to write something really sophisticated that's above like your skill level. And I say this as someone who has tried many times to make narrative work and just doesn't feel like what they're doing is great. Otherwise you kind of end up with this problem that a lot of people have. Like, if you've ever played D&D and you try and play like a wizard or a scientist character and you just end up having to like make up long words because you don't really know what that character would say, it's kind of nice to have a goofy tone to your game, because it means that you don't actually need to be like, you know, I can't even think of a name of a clever author to insert here, but you don't need to like be a very intelligent author that has all of these different chops for writing different types of characters and stuff if your game is a little bit silly and a little bit goofy. And all of the writing that we've seen so far in this game is about establishing this kind of voice that the game has, and it's setting us up to have an unlikable protagonist, which is interesting. It's a kind of interesting place to start. The game is very clearly signaling that we're not supposed to like this guy, and he's a ruffian and a bit of a d-bag, and the bad stuff that happens to them that we as a player are going to have to navigate are because this character is like bad and doing bad stuff to the people around them. And that's just a much more interesting place to start a story than having a kind of blank slate character that isn't really anyone and then forcing us to like treat them as a character because they keep doing dialogue, you know?
That curse thingy, he's bluffing, right? But if he's not, only the Grand Wizard can fix me up. That guy's living in a creepy tower, so I've heard. People say that the place is crawling with monsters. This is bad. Well, now that I think about it, a wizard's gonna be rich. Hey, this might be worth the trouble. Alright, let's check my loot first.
See, I don't know how much they paid Richard Ayoade to be in Fable, but they could have saved a lot of money by just stealing his likeness for the 3D model and then getting me to do the voice. Press enter or double click on the scrolls to equip them. Okay, these are my scrolls. Water magic, fire magic. Very similar looking. Double click. Hydros. Pyros. Does this mean if I play this game for a very long time, my Y, R, O, and S keys on my keyboard are going to get really badly clapped out?
What's up with this?
Reads the spell. That was cute. So we've got a basic attack that we do with space. We're moving with WASD. Basic attack with space. Press enter to start typing. Type the spell. Interface is good. Inputs are good. My immediate reaction to the spells is I wish they had like a slightly different effect in terms of how they moved and detonated and stuff, because they feel like two versions of the same thing, and that maybe makes the game less interesting as we move on, because they're both just a projectile that moves forward. And then our standard attack, again, they all feel like they're the same thing. Oh, and we can attack directionally, so if I'm facing downwards, that's interesting. So you cannot press backspace. So if I start typing Pyros and I get it wrong, I cannot delete. I cannot backspace. We get a little zap. That's neat. I don't know. Did anyone see what engine it said at the start? I don't know if it did. I do kind of... Yeah, I feel like the black and white at the moment is a great choice to start off with to get it up to this level, but I do feel like we're... I don't know how doing Magical Fantasy fits with black and white, you know? Because we're missing all the UX stuff of having the spells look different. We're missing all the UX elements of like having color-coded things in the interface in the world. I think you could like make the whole game sepia and then use key colors for VFX and stuff like that, and the whole thing would really shine. But it's a weird mix of things because the black and white and the stage is sort of suggesting early 2000s vaudeville, and this idea of what a wizard was comes from Tolkien and doesn't really exist at that time either. So I think when you start using like Victorian or sort of early age of cinema type aesthetics, but then you're using like a wizard with a pointy hat casting spells, it sort of feels a bit like a strange mix to me. As you explore the map, you will encounter mobs that will relentlessly pursue and attack you. When in casting mode, your spells will automatically target anything within a certain radius. Okay, so we don't necessarily have to aim. Each spell has an element with strengths and weaknesses you must master. Hit the right target and it's super effective, dealing more damage, but the wrong one might resist, taking less damage instead. Hope you studied your elements. I really don't like elemental rock, paper, scissors, but I like the fact that it's not totally blocking it. That might make it harder to learn though, because if it's just flat out saying don't use this thing on this thing because it does 0 damage, I'm going to learn that. If it does less damage, I might just carry on doing the bad matchup. Every enemy has an element and you can always see it in their health bar. Use this knowledge to strike with the right spells and gain the advantage. Okay, cool. At least it tells us and we don't have to like just guess. So these guys are Leaf, which I guess is we want to Pyros them. That's great. So far, I feel like the black and white for me is the biggest weakness of the game because I can't really... It feels more like a production constraint that the developer has done to make the game easier to make. And I think if I was making a game with this art style, it would be, you know, it would be a good idea to keep it in black and white for as long as possible. But it takes away some of the potential juice that we could get from the spells. Hydros. Ah! Hydros. There we go. Just things like seeing the coins come out and be yellow and everything. There's lots of stuff where I feel like we're missing something by not having color. For me, like the best version of this game would be like everything is sepia and brown and green and maybe like peach colors. And it's very, very neutral, but there's some color variation. And then we've got like a very bold, almost like a neon pastel blue and orange for these, and like yellow for the coins and stuff. And, you know, just so that we get the UX aspect of color back, because one of the problems with monochromatic games is you lose the UX function of the color. And by UX, if you're... I know I use that a lot on this channel and I don't always explain what it means. But I mean like kind of accessibility and how easy it is for people to sort of understand the game as they play it. And color is like one of the ways that we read a visual thing. So black and white feels to me, or any kind of bitone choice, art choice, feels to me like it can be totally fine if it's used entirely for mood, like in a very story-driven game, some sort of like walking simulator, horror type thing. But in a game that is a little bit more about skill checks and like situational awareness and then responding to it using a skill, it feels a bit mean to not use the color when you could, and it would like help people, and it would also make the action more exciting. Boohoo, sob.
Are you okay? Ook ook, why me? My banana gone. The banana? Wait, how are you talking? Ooh, ooh, ah! Banana! It seems to have to look for a I seem to have to look for a banana to pass through. Okay. Where's your banana? Where is it?
Show me the banana. It's very cute that it's a stage and we've got the actual audience down here as well. Again, that kind of feels like a little bit of a weird choice because it's depicting a stage play, but then the art choice of having it monochrome is kind of suggesting early cinema. This way? I am on a quest for a banana. Do not throw things at me, monkey. Yeah, I think color's just on spells and then where you need it in the interface and then make everything else sort of sepia rather than grey. Because sepia suggests like old but in kind of a warm, cozy way. And that for me would like evoke kind of paper and picture books and stuff like that. Whereas this is kind of early cinema, black and white, Charlie Chaplin stuff. Chest? Excuse me. Do I need to do a sneaky sneak? The arenas are pretty well laid out. There's these like fiddly narrow bits you need to walk through, but I can kind of see when I'm messing up and it feels like it's my fault, which is kind of what you want. Oops, copyright. Oh, B-A-N. I've got banana. Where is it? Can I look in my inventory? Just see if there was like some sort of Easter egg where I could cast banana now. But... Off. Okay, so we get like a little checkpoint at the start of the current room. That means I can go and get my banana. Getting a little bit of screen tearing. Is there some sort of setting I can... Doesn't seem to be. Don't know what's causing that. I don't know if you can see it. There's a little bit of screen tearing happening for me in the middle. Which is strange, because that usually happens when you're moving up and down. But give the banana to the lonely monkey. I think we should actually get the lonely monkey to question why they solve all of their problems using bananas. We might be an enabler in this situation. You know? I don't want to be an enabler. Banana. Ook ook. Now I can also get a girlfriend. What just happened? Did I just help a monkey score a date? Whatever. I'm not even going to question it anymore. Whoa, what was that? Sounded like it came from just up ahead. Booba the Balboon. Okay. We're going to defeat you, Baboon. Since it's harder to defeat bosses, I'll do you a favor. During boss fights, your spells will automatically lock onto the boss, so no need to worry about spell radius. Aren't I generous? Well, it'll be so embarrassing if you still die, though. Okay. This is a really good way of, like, doing the skill check of can you type the thing fast, because you can kind of abandon it early to shock yourself if you need to move. I'm still finding I need to look at my keyboard to type this fast, which is not great. I guess people that play a lot of these and who type for a living are not going to have this problem, but for some reason I'm having it. Ah! Come stay a while and listen. That felt good in terms of, like, balance. Obviously, when it comes to difficulty, you can never take one person's word for anything. But I don't feel like I'm doing super well at this game. I've taken a bit of damage. I've died once. That was challenging, but I was still able to complete it by sort of locking in and concentrating a little bit. So that feels like a good balance for the first time you encounter a more difficult moment in a game. Well, that's one way to get rejected. Guess you won't be needing this anymore. I'll take your banana back. Who's this? Who are you? The animation is wonderful. I don't know how much of it is happening in, like, in-engine timelines. Like, procedurally, I could not tell you, but it is really nice. Oh, well. We have a new challenger, huh?
Now, a talking goat. Hey, dude. Can I meet the Grand Wizard here?
The Grand Wizard? Oh, if you look kind of weak and homeless, brat, you must be the Grand Beggar.
What's up with this annoying little freak of a creature?
Either way, welcome to the Tower of Trial, small fry. I'm Gould, the Tower Guardian. To answer your question, I guess you'll meet him at the top floor. Try not to die.
Okay, cool. So I think we've just made it through the tutorial section, and now this is the actual game one where we're kind of into a challenge tower. That would be the general. That would be what I would assume at this stage. And thus, our so-called hero begins his grand ascent. Will he lift the curse or trip over his ego halfway up? Checkpoint reached. Okay, we're going to try about 5 more minutes of this, and then I'm going to move on to the next one. I like a lot of what I'm seeing here. I just feel like the black and white feels like a slightly strange choice, and I can understand why you would do it from a production point of view, but it might not be setting the game up for the best success. Because it's so cute, and all of the rest of the art is really, really nice. I don't think you would need to do full color to make this really sing, but we are trying to use spells as our kind of emotional audiovisual payoff for getting the typing right or wrong. You know, you get the typing right, you cast a spell, you succeed. You get it wrong, you get zapped. All of those little things are our moments of emotional payoff, and I think it's going to make the game a lot more impactful at kind of engaging people if those things feel more powerful. And color, you know, removing color from the whole project means that we just don't have that extra layer of emotional feedback. I do think making it sepia rather than black and white would make it feel a little bit cozier as well, which would like amplify what everything else that the art is doing. And also just think of the kind of UX thing of like, when I see an enemy's elemental icon on their health bar, I'm going to be able to recognize that quicker if there's a bit of color coding.
So you're going to help me get to the top or what? Hell no, there's monsters lurking in every corner of this place. Meh. But I can help you. How? I'll be around the tower. Need insider tips? Find me. Oh, so you're a good guy after all. Of course I am. Useful hints only for 50 coins, but keep it quiet, don't tell the Grand Wizard.
Straight up Dark Souls character, this guy.
To start our beautiful business relationship, I'll even give you some gifts.
Okay. New spell obtained. Ignitia. Nerosfera. Interesting. How do I change my spells? Because it... Oh, I. There we go. So what I'm going to do is... Fire... No. No. We want... Fire. Fire. Oh. Fire. Fire. Leaf. Water. Water. Or maybe we go water. Water. Leaf. Okay, fire, fire, leaf, water, water, leaf. And I can switch between those and then do my little spells. Yeah, I really don't like the fact that they're all just projectiles that go the same way. It doesn't feel like a good use of a magic system. Because now the only real reason to use a different spell is that one is more powerful than the other. So if Nerosfera is more powerful than Hydros, then the only reason for using Hydros is that it's quicker to type. I prefer it when magic systems in fantasy games have some orthogonal differences between the different types of magic. You know, fire does damage over time, ice slows things down, or water slows things down. Plant-based stuff kind of roots things in place for a moment, whatever it is, but we just don't have that here, and it makes it feel a little bit underwhelming. Not really a fan of that. They're the same, you know. And I think that's partly because they've made it so that the spells seek the enemies for you, so that you don't have to do too much fiddly stuff outside of the typing. But the trade-off is that they're the same thing. You type more letters to do more of that element of damage. You know, maybe people will be fine with that, but it feels a little bit lazy. I'm going to say that. I've had people get really offended when I say that before, which is interesting because it sort of suggests people that have never taken feedback on a creative project before, because when someone says that something in your work feels lazy, they're not saying that you are lazy. They're saying that, you know, judging this just purely as a thing someone made without knowing the person who made it, it feels like a lazy design choice. It feels like a lazy choice to make. But you know, maybe it's people that English isn't their first language and they don't understand how that term is usually used when we're doing like art crit type stuff. But I've said to people before on the stream, oh, this feels like a lazy choice, and then people have got really, really offended by it. But the black and white feels a little bit like a lazy choice, and having the spells be pretty much the same as each other feels like a lazy choice as well. And it kind of undermines the getting new spells with longer words a little bit. I think part of the problem here is that, you know, you've called it, I think you called it a Souls-like. Is this the one that's been called a Souls-like in the Steam page? I can't remember which of the two was. But this is reasonably kind of difficult. It's not trying to be a, like, you can't fail type cozy game. There's a level of difficulty here, and I think that also means that the people that will enjoy this will want the same thing I want, which is for your arsenal of spells to actually feel like different stuff. Because you're sort of aiming it at people that already play fantasy-themed action games already. Maybe they do have different effects that I just haven't been able to see. You know? But maybe the tier 2 spell could just damage the whole circle rather than having a projectile. That would be one way of doing it. And it makes me wonder whether the dev has tried things like that and then rolled back the choice because they wanted to simplify the game, in which case it's a good design choice, or if they've just done what was easiest to implement. You know, sometimes you end up on something that seems simple or quote-unquote lazy because you tried something more complex, then playtested it and people couldn't understand it, so you roll it back and make it simpler. But sometimes it's just that, yeah, I mean, I would expect the second tier spell to do something else, like be a big pillar that appears around me, all of that kind of stuff. But it's just not, it's not got that. I feel like we've touched upon the most important points about this game. I think the writing is really charming. I would still do some revision to the writing and kind of check a section of story and see if there's like 5 sentences when there could be 4 or 3 or whatever. But I do find the writing really charming. The art is really charming. I think I would personally be much more attracted to this game if I saw a little bit more spell variation, a little bit more kind of work gone into the VFX. The animation is great. The sound is great. The lack of color is hurting the game in some ways. And I think that's not just from the perspective of like my experience of playing it, but I think it kind of just limits the amount of people that are going to be drawn to this game. Because if it was a sort of slightly warmer, cozier color, I think this kind of cutesiness is going to then appeal to the same sort of people that, some of the same sort of people that liked Cult of the Lamb. Because Cult of the Lamb has like a split appeal between people that want to do like a hardcore Binding of Isaac, Hades type game, and people that want to do a like cozy, make little characters and build a village game. And your art style is situating it with that side of the audience, but the black and white won't do that, because the black and white makes it look a little bit bleak and like it's going to be kind of depressing. You can still limit the color. I would do that using sepia rather than black and white, and I would use some color for the spells and interface where appropriate, which will make it all kind of feel a lot more like it has a lot more welcoming, I guess. Yeah. Mugenics has color on specific objects. It's just very drained, very desaturated. And that's why in Mugenics, that kind of choice doesn't feel quote-unquote lazy, because they've done it for an emotional effect rather than so that they don't have to put colors in, right? So this one is Wordlock. We've got Wordlock, which is another typing game, and then we're going to check out Spellsy. Have I broken it? Let me try that again. We're getting we're getting a black screen. This isn't just the stream, this is the game for me. Not something I sort of expect once something has already made its way all the way to Steam. Building suspense, yeah. So one of the things I've noticed recently that seems to be quite a common occurrence is when people make Godot games that are a little bit more graphically intensive. Maybe it's because the system doesn't handle loading in a way that just kind of hides it, like a Unity or Unreal game would. But I've had a few issues where I don't think I've ever played a Godot game on stream where once it was running, it didn't run okay. But I have had a few issues with Godot games where they just take a long time to initiate, or you start in an area and then when it loads the next area, it takes a long time to kind of load all the assets in. And it seems like maybe there's not anything bundled with that to make it stream in a sensible way or to hide it in a nice way. Or if it is, it's just kind of not a default and people don't use it. So what could be happening here is we should have a loading screen and the loading is just happening before we see anything from the game, and that means that the game looks broken. So that's a shame. It feels like a bit of a missed opportunity. I'm not going to spend ages and ages trying to get this to work. No reviews yet. It's not being on compatibility rendering mode, maybe. Yeah, I mean, I can't debug that for you once your game is already on a stream and it's kind of on Steam and everything. What I will do, just to give it a chance, and it might give us an out-of-date version of the game, but let me see if Wordlock itch.io. Let's see if they've got like an old itch.io version of the game. Yes, they have. I.U.T.K. Here is the developer. So can we play an older build of the game? No. That's a shame. Because if you still had the itch version up, I could go and play that and I could give you some feedback on the itch version. It might be out of date. It might not be as up to date as the Steam version, but if the core of the game is the same, we could have still had some kind of useful discussion around that. But yeah, I'll try and start it one more time. We got the I.U.T.K. start screen. I'm not touching anything. I'm not gonna click around or yeah, not gonna happen. So let's check out Spellsy. It's a shame because we're getting the music come through, so it's obviously starting, but check your game with a few people before you make it public on Steam. Maybe you did, you know, don't want to be too harsh. Maybe you did, but you know, the first time someone tries to open your game and shouldn't be something that is happening on a stream. Okay, this is Spellsy. Spellsy, which is the more word gamey rather than typing game of the set today. We might round up a little bit earlier today. I'm going to give this one about 35 minutes. Depends how into it we get. Sort of tentatively excited for this one. Okay. Sand. Yep. Have to click to confirm it. Word seems to be aligned with the setting it's in, which is nice. That's to redo the last word. Oh, and these have two. Okay, so yellow is like a tier 2 letter, and we have to use them twice. It's weird that we don't have a keyboard shortcut for going back, like pressing delete or something. And... Sandad? We can't make Sandad, that's not a word. Nad... Sadad? It's an interesting puzzle. Seems quite difficult for a second word, though. So we've got to make a word that has S-N-A-A-D-D in it. A. Can it still be multiple words, or you have to get it in one? I think we have to get it in one. Sort of what it seems to be suggesting to me. Or maybe because I was making... okay, I see what's happened. I think this might be a little bit too difficult for puzzle number 2, guys. How do I cancel out of what I've done? Go back. Okay. Sand. Okay, now we do... sad... and cool. That's neat. That's a cool progression. Yeah, what Jack just said in the chat. I like how the letters have changed, but already force you to think about it differently. I like that. I like the puzzle progression. It was quite a jump up in what I had to do. The first one was just like I could see the word sand. The second one, very different way of thinking. It feels like we need some keyboard shortcuts to go back a letter or to restart. It's a little bit awkward having to kind of click around. I'm sort of trying to press delete and backspace to do different kind of keyboard letters and to do these, and they just don't have a keyboard shortcut. Oils and soil. Okay. So that was two 4-letter words that had the same letters in but were different words from each other. Spot. Oh. Spot. Tops. And pots. Okay, dry run. We've got a word pun in the. This is what I mean about something being coherent and cohesive. Word pun in the name of the set of levels as well. They're called the dry run because it's the bit after the tutorial, and it's a desert. Nice. Myth. None. Neon. We've got few levels where we've got like multiple anagrams using the same letters. So here, if we do ace, we get them all down to being yellow. And then we can do face. And then we can do cafe. Axe. Oh, we have to have 3 letters. Okay. Axe. Max. Exam. It's really neat. I like the way that the tiering of the letters, like the different colours that suggest how many. Because when we looked at this at the start, I assumed that the number in the corner was going to be like a Scrabble letter value, but it's not. It's how many times you can use that letter in the level. I like the way that's all visually communicated, of like the tiles kind of downgrading and breaking more and going back down to the yellow and then the red as you kind of score more words with them. Really great. Live. Vile. Evil. I thought there was going to be 2, because we had 2 vowels in. I thought we were going to get 2 2-letter words, but we didn't. Tone. On. No. And I don't know if there are any that. Yeah, we have to make 3-letter words or more. See, I can't make a 2-letter word even though it's a word. So now I have to reset, which feels a bit awkward. Net. It's a good puzzle though. I like the puzzle, and I like the way everything is art directed. I find the undo steps a little bit awkward, because you don't usually need to undo one step. You usually need to go back to the start of the whole puzzle. And if I could just hammer backspace to undo, then pressing it 3 times would be a lot less awkward. I know this is tiny stuff, but it just feels like there should be a thing for it. Select letter, remove letter, backspace. It says I can remove letter with backspace. Why is that not working then? Oh no, I can. I just can't go back. Can't undo with backspace. Is there an undo shortcut? Undo is U. Okay. I mean, I'm going to have to remember that, but that's fine. I would say if you're making a puzzle game and you have an undo like this or a reset, I would say this is more reset than undo, right? Because putting the letters in, the backspace is what people would think of as undo. This is resetting the whole puzzle. So I would use R for reset rather than U for undo. But also, people that play Soccer Ban, which I think is going to be loosely in the same territory as something like this, people that play thinky games, little kind of small puzzle games, are very, very used to Z being the undo button as well. So, I mean, just have multiple things that can do that. You don't need to use the keyboard for much else in this game. So, 1. Tone. That doesn't work. So now I press U and that goes back. Yeah, reset R is reset the whole thing. Okay, no, that's good. So undo and reset are different things. That's what I was looking for. I don't know how to do this one, because we do a 3-letter word and then we end up with these that can only be used once. So then we need to make ton, and that doesn't make a word. So, oh yeah, toe. There we go. good. I really like the way that this very small set of rules so far kind of makes quite a lot of puzzle variety. It's really neat. Net 10 note. Yeah, Shivan got a different solution for the same thing. Yeah, you are totally allowed to help, but there is a little bit of a delay. I think it's about a 30-second delay on when I see what you've typed in the chat at the moment. Dry run, just deserts. We've got another word pun. I love this. You notice they're using the colors of the letters in terms of the upgrade pattern of the letters where it goes red, gold, yellow. They're using that as the progression of the levels as well. So we've got like a consistent visual language between this is like the power or the toughness of this tile that you're going to break down as you complete the level, and then we've actually got that for making it feel like you're progressing through the game as you go on different levels. Very, very small thing, but it just shows a level of attention to detail. Okay. So we can make dream that way. And we can make maybe that way. So 2 5-letter words to clear that one. Gooning Mistro, do you think a fixed camera stealth game without a radar would work? I'm going to answer this. Let me just reread the question because I feel like this is a good sort of question to have as a clip or talk about in another video. Sorry. Gooning Maestro, which is a fantastic screen name, by the way, said, do you think a fixed camera stealth game without a radar would work? So like Thief, but with a Metal Gear Solid camera. The reason I find questions like that really hard to answer is that whether or not something could work is usually about execution rather than the idea itself. And there are ideas which we already know work, right? Like if you copy an existing game, you know that the idea itself kind of works because someone has executed it in a way that did work. So the idea can work. It's been proven. And that's why we have game genres. So people like do things that have been proven. So they do, you know, this genre of game, and then it has this camera, and it's all kind of stuff that we don't need to experiment with because we know it already works. If you say, can we do this genre of game and put the camera up here and do fixed camera, whatever, can it work? The way that you answer those questions is by doing it, and you do it in the smallest way possible. That's what a prototype is. No one can answer that question for you of like, would this thing work? People could raise reasons why it might not, you know, like I think that if you put parrying in a game, then we need to be close into the action and we need to be able to see the character models so that we know when to parry. And if you have a camera that's really far out and you put parrying in it, then we can't really see the action enough to see like what animation stage someone is in when the attack comes in to parry it. And those kind of zoomed out Hades type top downs are much more about like rolling around, moving into space rather than seeing what an individual enemy is doing all the time, right? That's an example of where, based on my observation of how other games work, I can intuit that maybe this combination of things might not work. A stealth game with a fixed camera, yeah, it could work, right? Probably has worked. Without a radar, yeah, maybe. But if you've played a bunch of those games, then I feel like you already have some of the answers of what the hurdles there would be. And then you answer the question by making the thing. And one of the reasons why I don't... when I started this channel, one of the things I used to do as a consulting service was read people's game design documents and feed back on them. I did about 5 or 6, and then I stopped doing it because I realized that reviewing people's ideas was a pointless exercise because you don't know what they can execute. So someone will send you a game design document, and if you know that person and you know what they've made in the past, you can pass helpful comment on their idea because you've seen their previous games, and you can say, okay, I've seen what you've done before. I've seen what type of things you're good at. I can see that you're good at programming interfaces or making game feel work in action games and all of these types of things. But, you know, this game that you're planning doesn't use your skills, or it uses your skills in a really good way. When it's like someone you don't know and they say, is this a good idea? Which is basically what someone's doing when they present you with a game design document. It's like, well, I don't know, because your game design document isn't just an idea, it's a plan. And if you say to me, like, I plan to climb that mountain over there, then it's like, well, yeah, great. But, like, what equipment do you have? You know, what experience do you have of climbing a mountain? And then whether or not it's a good idea to go and climb that particular mountain really comes down to, like, you as the person who's got to do it, rather than, like, whether it's inherently a good idea for people to climb mountains, if that makes sense. I think it's very difficult to answer those kind of questions when people you don't know throw an idea at you and go, could this work? It's like, yeah, I guess so. Depends who's doing it, you know, like with anything, you know, even with really, really experienced game studios, if people try to pivot from making one type of game to making a completely different type of game that they'd never made before, they often don't do very well at it. And that's because they've built up specialist knowledge in a particular, you know, genre or platform or both of those things. And then they try and just make something totally different. And it doesn't always work. There are very few studios that jump around between different types of games and genres and do it successfully. And it's very much the same with making games on your own. Is yeah, the answer is unique to each person, like Jackal has said, and the value of the idea doesn't lie in the idea itself. It lies in the executor's capacity to execute that idea in a good way. You know, I make small 2D games because I know how to use a 2D engine. I'm reasonably okay at certain types of 2D art. There are types of programming that I enjoy doing more than others, and that means that I'm more likely to sit down and do them for a long time. And that means that when I look at my big list of ideas of games I'd like to make, sure, there are some games in there that are just not appropriate for my skill set. I can't really make a grand strategy game. I know that without a team, I would not be able to build that. I know that without a team, I probably wouldn't be able to make a 3D game of any kind, really. So those are ideas where they might be good ideas if someone else had them, but they're not good ideas for me. And I think that's just where the value of an idea comes from. It's all about the context, and that's why sometimes you see something, you'll see like a game that's kind of dumb, right? Or like maybe a piece of music or a song or a YouTube video that's a little bit of a stupid idea, and you think, why has this done so well that this person has done this kind of thing, and it's a bit kind of crap and it's a bit of a stupid idea? And it's the fact that they're the person who did it. And one of the benefits of having unusual ideas, or ideas that someone else wouldn't do, is that because no one else would do them, they haven't done it. And that means that if you do it, even if it's not very good, it ends up being kind of okay because it's the only thing of that kind that exists, right? If you invent a genre of music and you're the only person in that genre of music, it doesn't matter if your music is slightly worse than someone else's, because you're not competing with anyone, because you're in a category of one. So that's kind of like the trade-off. You can have a really unique idea, but you have to execute it to see if it's a good idea or not. And then in the execution, okay, it might not come out great, but because you're the only person who had that idea so far and actually executed it to completion, people might like it anyway, because you're in a category of one, you're the only person who's made that thing. So yeah, I'd always just advise you, test stuff out when you have the idea, do it in the simplest way possible. I have someone I've been mentoring that you may have seen their game on this channel, but they're making like a Balatro style game where you draw cards and you get big points and stuff. When he first had that idea for that game, the first thing that he did was spend, I don't know, a few weeks, a month, making a prototype for it on Tabletop Simulator, which meant that he could just quickly test the idea as a thing that someone sits down and does as an activity without building any of it in a game engine. And that was a really, really good way to test that idea, right? And that's kind of the heart of prototyping. Watch Mark Brown on Game Maker's Toolkit on prototyping. Watch that video. That video is the reason why I have not done a video on prototyping on this channel, because until I can work out a specific thing about prototyping I want to talk about, I think the Game Maker's Toolkit video about prototyping is absolutely perfect and everyone should watch it. It's basically just, you know, the idea that when you're prototyping, you're testing an idea to see if it's a good idea, and you should do that in the kind of cheapest and easiest way possible. And that's why you see these videos, you know, you brought up Metal Gear, why you see these videos of Kojima sitting around with a Lego model of a level and showing it to people, because that was a quicker way of prototyping and testing that idea, that particular idea, than building it in a computer. So in order to answer the question of is X a good idea, we need to just kind of start doing it. But in order to start doing it in a way that wastes loads of time, we probably don't want to do that in a game engine, or maybe using a set of skills that you don't have yet. So, you know, if you have an idea and it would require you to learn a particular language or workflow that you can't actually do yet, test the idea some other way. You know, test your game ideas out in Fortnite. You know, the Fortnite map maker is crazily adaptable now. If you have an idea about a type of game, like what if we made a MOBA but it was also had cars, you can actually, if you have the idea of what if we made a MOBA with cars, you can test that out in Fortnite, and it would take you maybe 4 or 5 hours work to learn that, versus making it in a game engine and maybe having to learn a bunch of stuff that you don't know yet, and it taking a very, very long time to just get you to the point where you can test the idea, which is what you came to do, rather than learn a programming language or whatever it is you're trying to, whatever barrier is in the way. So yeah, watch the Game Maker's Toolkit video about prototyping, because it really goes into how building a prototype isn't just starting to make the game, it is testing a particular idea, whether it's like an idea for like the whole base of the game, or if you're further into making a game and you want to test one little idea out but you don't know whether or not it goes in the game yet, you might make a paper prototype. You might make a level prototype in a different level editor. You might make a board game prototype of a part of a game or a game you want to make. And that's just the only way of answering the question, really. You know, you can also answer these questions through your previous work. If you've made 3 games already and you look at them and you go, okay, game A and B, you know, game A and C weren't very good. Game B was my strongest game. Okay, what is it about game B that made it a better game? What can you learn about yourself from that kind of, from that skills audit? When you look at the games and you work out which one came out best, you look at that one and you think, okay, in that one, I used this skill, this skill, this skill, and I didn't have to use this skill, and the other 2 games needed me to use that skill, and so maybe I'm stronger at these things and weaker at that thing. And then when you have a new idea, you can look back at your past experience and you can go, okay, well, I've got these 3 ideas at the moment, and this one seems to align best with what I've done well in the past. And again, if you kind of think about whether or not an idea is a good idea, being linked to whether it's a good idea for you personally, the best way to gather data about that is to just do stuff, whether it's trying to execute the idea or trying to execute any idea. Then you learn about yourself, and then you're more able to answer that question of like, is this a good idea for me to do this thing? Yeah. Okay. I said all of that because I wanted to avoid doing this puzzle because it looks horrible. This is the first time we've got into like a really long one. And we can't jump, so we can't jump across the middle. Egg. Bruh. And if we take the R out, I think we might get a bit stuck as well. That's alright. I know it's annoying to get those kind of it depends type answers, but I think a lot of the time when people first get into making games, they really want to like make sure that the thing they plan to do is a good idea before they start doing it, and the only way to learn if something is a good idea is by doing it, and also then you kind of build your skills up. Because even if you have a good idea, your first go at executing is probably not going to be good. Rego? Is that a word? Okay. Lobe. And now all the letters are separated. So now we have to reset. This is going to be a really hard one. Okay, R doesn't do... R resets one step. So R and U are the same thing, I think. Google. Does Google count as a word? We can't... So when there's two of the same letters, we can use them in the same word. But we can't use the same tile twice in one word. So we wouldn't be able to make Google anyway. We can't make goggle either. Blogger. That's the big word. Blogger. And then we get egg. We get ego, but that's going to break the link. So if we do that, then we can't do anything else. Nate said, prototype like you goon, quickly and with anything you have lying around. Exactly. Reblog. That's too modern a word. So egg, I think egg is definitely one. And it's got nice symmetry to it now, but I feel like that might be misleading. Then we can do blogger. We can do lob. Can we do egg twice? Will it let us do egg twice? Okay. Geg. Geg. Rebel lobe blog. Ah, thank you. Rebel. Can we make rebel? Yeah, we can't make rebel because it has two E's. Lobe. Log. Egg. Goo. Stuck with goo. We can't make globe because we can't get from the G to the L. Obla. Bertigo. Goo. Blogger gets rid of the R, but I think the strategy here is to like get rid of the white letters first, then get rid of the yellow letters, and so egg is the only word that gets rid of that whole layer at the same time. But I don't know if that means that it is totally necessary to finish the thing. We can't make globe because we can't get from G to L, and they have to be adjacent. So when they've got a gap like this, we can't. They have to be adjacent or diagonal. Beg, gob. Broken it again, so we go back. Egg. Beg. Log. Blogger. There we go. Beg for the egg, log blogger. This could be a great game for like inventing a Clockwork Orange type slang. Hey log blogger, why don't you beg for some eggs? We got 3 stars for that. I personally feel like in a game like this, I want a little bit of a kind of crunchier score system. Because basically every every puzzle that we've passed so far, we've got 3 stars for it. I don't know where the stars come from. And I basically can't tell where the scoring range comes from in this game at all. Because it just seems like if you manage to complete the level, you get 3 stars. which is not how star-based systems work, but that's how it feels like it is kind of leaning at the moment. Just noticed a really odd phenomena that when there's a longer word in there, you kind of just notice it quicker. 10. Maybe that was a false friend. Next. Out. Don't use hints. Okay. I mean, you're going to get a type of player that just never wants to use a hint anyway. Collect. Toll. Tell. That wasn't good. Collect, sell. Lot. Tickle. Lot that way. Let. Sell. Oh, that's mean. So we've got 2 stars here, so maybe if you quit the level and you haven't finished it, you preserve like the stars you got up to, but I'm not sure. Sell. Toe. Nope. Tell. Cot. Collect. That's neat. Exigful said, "It says your clinic doesn't consult for interactive fiction with low player agency. What would qualify as a story-based game with agency in 3D, for example?" What I'm trying to get at that is that if you hire me to do some work for you and your game is a piece of interactive fiction or interactive literature, I am not the person you should hire for that. Just like if you went to go and hire a carpenter to make you some chairs and they were a carpenter that specialized in shelves, it wouldn't be a good person to hire for that. And just the fact that I'm familiar on YouTube and stuff doesn't make me the person that you should hire to make a type of game that I don't personally understand or have the skills to make good. So the thing is that although I have like management and teaching experience, which makes things slightly different, anyone with some degree of seniority at making a particular type of thing might be open to mentoring you with that sort of thing. So although I've got like a website set up that's like, here's what I do with consulting and mentoring, and then I have a specific list of things like you just listed that I don't do, there will be people who have worked on that type of game that you want to make, that if you reach out to them and said, hey, can I give you some money for a few hours of your time and talk through these problems I'm having with my story game, they might be willing to do that. And that would be a much better use of your time than talking to me about it, because I'm not in games and game design for the stories. And that's just mostly a case of like, I watch TV for that. I read books for that. Occasionally I do really like games with stories. I talked about this in a video last week. You can go and look at it, and I talk about when I like stories in games, what does that look like. But even then, mostly that's because they have a good writer or they have good interaction design, and if it's the writing you need help with, you should talk to a writer and not me. So it's really just a case of not wanting to take money from people who want me to help with something that I'm not actually equipped to help with. On notice, that's going to use all of the letters up once. If I can spell. Yeah, the music is pretty well chosen. It's like, it's upbeat, but it doesn't get in the way of you thinking. You know, when you choose music for puzzle games, you've got to be really careful that it's not like so stimulating that it makes you not able to think. Ton, and we've done ice over here. So maybe we need to do like 3 and 3, like con and tie. Yeah, that's it. I would another thing I would be wary of. This is a tiny art tweak you can do in this game, and that's, I think, when you start to get feedback on your games, when the feedback becomes really minuscule, that's a good sign that your game is kind of done, and you can kind of you should be happy to ship it. But these lines that appear in the background are a little bit confusing because they look like they relate to the relationships between these tiles, and they don't. So you either need to change this background grid, these little bits that are poking out here. So you've got like this set of tiles here, and then the grid that we're working on is laid over the top, and there's these little lines that you'll see just appear in a minute as the tiles go away. But it makes it look like they're indicating like a little travel from here to here to here to here. And they don't actually have any meaning in relation to the gameplay grid. So I would either remove them completely or do something different with the texturing of this. But at the moment, it's just kind of bits from this showing through, and it feels slightly misleading at times. I keep looking to it for information, and it's not actually telling me anything. 8. Now, these ones can only be used once. I don't think Zon is a word, so I think we need to make 3 3-letter words that use each of these once. Maybe? Zone or Zona. And then train. Oh, okay, so zone. Train, and then something with the remaining red letters. Yeah, the lines have felt like a big red herring. Well, no, a tiny red herring actually, but it took me a while. I rate it. No. Ren. It. 10 air. Oh, yeah. Thanks, KP. Didn't see that. I was so looking for the 6-letter word, and it just wasn't there. Unicursal. I typically... So what I try to do is just make sure that the names are in the upcoming streams. I don't send emails anymore. It just takes a long time. And I don't have, like... Channel gets to the point where I can pay someone else to do production stuff. I might be a little bit more on the ball about that kind of stuff, but yeah, at the moment it's like when the streams go up, the names of the games are in the streams, and ideally people will see that in some way. I would like to be able to do that as a courtesy, but it also kind of gets into the territory of like oh, that was interesting. Gets into the territory of like, okay, how much effort am I going to put into telling people to watch my channel on one occasion versus just like hoping that they'll just generally check in every so often, you know? what I've been trying to do is I'll plan a whole month's worth of streams, put them all up. You can see in advance, and then if your game is on that list, although I think actually this month we did it in the newsletter. So if you go on Patreon and subscribe to the newsletter, which is free, and you don't need to actually be a member to get it or anything, because that's how newsletters work. I will make sure that every month, at the start of the month, we announce those things. Which is actually what I'm going to be sorting out for the rest of today after this stream. That's a way to make sure that you find out about it that doesn't require me to like email everyone individually, which is what I was doing when I started the channel, and it was just not sustainable. Okay, first time we've got 2 stars, so let's try that again. Amazing, cool. That's good. Hat. No. Whenever we use the blue, it explodes the ones around it and takes a layer off them. So we have to get rid of the E first, I think. We could do head that way. So maybe there's... No, we couldn't. Teach. Ooh, I think you got it. Yep. Nice one, KP. Who was it at the start of the stream that was saying that they're not any good at these games? So, if I trigger that once and I make a word with it, I'm going to reduce a bunch of letters down to red level, but then it's going to explode and it's going to get rid of the red ones, and then we'll just be left with the others. I think. Lathe? What I would also like to be able to use enter as the confirm key. You have to click again to confirm. It just, I don't know, there's something about that Coco, is that a word? Just something satisfying about pressing enter to confirm a word when it's in a word game. Thacky. Thack. That's the proper... Father. That's not what I meant to do. Hack. Can't do anything with that either. I think if you have a rewind or an undo in your game, you should do like a little bit of an effect on the screen when you do that as well. Maybe it is fat to get rid of the white in the middle. Oh yeah, we can... Oh, well done, factory. What happens when we trigger these twice? Canal, well done. That was impressive. See, the stream delay, the chat delay doesn't matter so much with this one because you suggest it and then I see it 30 seconds later and I'm still on the puzzle, so... Rentralala. Dreamt. Rant. Let's just try it. Len. Nell. Okay. Lantern. I mean, we might not be able to get lanterned, but that's still pretty good. Yeah, well done. Blocked. One thing I've only just remembered is that the first few levels had words that related to the level. But that was, I guess that was part of how it was teaching us. Canyons. Canyon. Will that do it? So when this goes off, will it trigger this one and then that will take those out? I think that might be how it works. Let's see. Yeah. It's a really cool little set of rules. They've got so much gameplay out of a relatively small set of rules. I'm really, really impressed. And then they've gone like the full way to make it look nice and feel nice as well. Electric. Trial. Uh-oh. Maybe we don't want to make electric straight away. Trial. You can't put the same word in twice, it won't let you. Although maybe this is a rule exception because it's using a different letter. That's going to be disappointing if that is the case, though. Yeah, I already used this word. Yeah, you can't use the same word twice even if it uses different tiles. Rice. Ah, yes. Well done. And then you do electric around here. No, that's not gonna, oh, maybe it will. Electric. Electric. elect. Okay, I'm going to do one more. I'm going to log off for the day and set up next month's streams and the newsletter and all of that kind of stuff. Questions. Tone. That was easy. I'll do one more that's actually a challenge because that wasn't. It was just immediately in front of me. So green is going to be the 4th stage that the tiles can go up to, and then they're using it for the difficulty here as well. And because we're in a desert, they've used green as the rarer colour, which kind of matches with the rest of the art direction for green to be the rarer colour that it takes a while to work up to. It's all very smart. Spiky. Yeah, I think that in terms of like feedback on this game, there's a couple of keyboard shortcuts I feel are missing. When I've finished the word and I want to confirm and input it, I have to click again on the last letter, and that's fine. That works totally fine. But I have this kind of instinctive pull to finish the word by pressing enter on enter or return on the keyboard. It doesn't have that shortcut, and that feels a little bit like something's missing. Someone mentioned they'd like to be able to type out the word, but that doesn't really work with there being multiples of the same letter, so I'm not sure we can do that. There's a little bit of confusion between what undo and return means. Undo and reset. One time I pressed one that I thought would just go back one stage and it went back to the start of the level. I would have like a little VFX for that. Like going back a stage, maybe it just goes boop, and then when you reset the whole thing, maybe it does like a... think of, if we're doing a desert, I don't know if it stays as a desert, but think of like how you would represent a puff of magic in like Disney's Aladdin or something. Like it's a kind of lilac, sparkly, very quick puff of smoke, and when you reset the level it goes poof, and it goes back. Just so that those moments have a very clear visual divide between what happened before you press the button and what happened after the button. Makes it nicer to watch. And also, I think when you have those moments when a player fails or gives up in your game, you want to just kind of make a little like whap whap about it. Just generally, that would be like the only thing I would add. I love how everything ties together in this. I think it's really great. And I just realised I've referenced Aladdin, but it's actually doing Wild West, isn't it? With the cacti, and the music is like chilled out Western music. So maybe there is some sort of VFX, like a puff of smoke or something that you use to reset it or something. Because the resetting feels like an anticlimax, and I know it should be because you failed. But I think when you press the button in your game that's like retry, there should be just a little bit more of a kind of acknowledgement by the game that things have gone back. Moldy said, do you think games are an inferior form of storytelling to books or movies, or is it just a preference you don't tend towards story-based games? Go and watch my last video about it. I put a video out a couple of days ago that was called Don't Let a Bad Story Ruin a Good Game. And it's not that I don't like stories in games, it's that the people that are very good at them are very, very rare. And I am a game designer, and this is a game design review channel and a games education channel. And the way that you find out if your writing is good is by sending it to a writer and not a game designer. I have quite high standards for writing. I think when it's done badly, it harms games, and it's often better to just not have it in them. I think the best storytelling in games is not done through dialogue and text most of the time. I think it's done through people really understanding like the affordances of games and using those in an interesting way. I also think sometimes people want games to be everything, and that comes from just not engaging with a lot of other media. So they go into games and they're like, I want to tell a story, and it's like, well, do you really want to tell a story in games, or is it just because you'd love to make an anime but it's too expensive? You'd like to make a movie but it's too expensive. You can't be bothered to write a book, and you think if you write a book no one will read it, so you make a game instead. There's all of these different things, like what's your motivation for doing it? what are the skills you bring to it. You know, most of the people that are good narrative designers write fiction as well. They don't just work exclusively in games. They write fiction, they write tabletop role-playing games, all of that kind of stuff. Also, just reading a story on a stream is not an interesting use of a stream, especially when most of the audience are there to think about general game development and design and not hear lots and lots of dialogue. So there's lots and lots of reasons why I ask people not to ask me to help with that. And it's not that, and I don't even say don't send in story games for Indies Under the Knife. It's just specifically my consulting practice. I say this is not what I'm good at, so don't expect me to help you with this thing, because it's not my strength. So we checked out 2 games today. We checked out what was the first one? It was called the first one, that was Spellsy, and the first one was not Wordlock, it was let me find my spreadsheet. The first one was TypeCaster, which is a fantastic pun. I'm very happy that we're starting to have conversations about games rather than people arguing about what tools to use for once, though. Revitalize said, as a writer making a game is a great medium for story. The hard part is just finding a way to make the story worth investing in for the player, so it isn't just dialogue pausing gameplay. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think the other thing is, you think, depending on what type of game you make, I think of your game as a party, right? Your game is a party. It's like something that people are they're coming to hang out and do stuff, and a party can have a different tone. I always think it's funny if you ever look at like the autism test questions. They have a question that's like, would you rather go to a library or would you rather go to a party? It's like, well, I'd quite like to go to a party in a library. And that's how they get you. They catch you out, because if you'd like to go to a library party, then you're probably ADHD or something. But you're asking people to come and do an activity, and how story fits into that is going to fit with the nature of that activity. So if you're asking people to come and like dance, they probably don't want to sit down and read a book, right? If you're asking people to come and look at some paintings, that might go quite well with reading a book, because chilling out and looking at some paintings is psychologically a similar activity to quietly sitting and reading a book, whereas dancing around and moving your body is not a psychologically similar activity to sitting and reading a book. So I think sometimes when games have lots and lots of, and when we say story, I'm talking specifically about writing. When games have lots of writing in, then they need to justify that by going with the rest of the game. And a game where I'm there to experience like exercising skill by moving a little character around is not a game where I expect to be reading lots of text. A game where I'm exploring the world and taking in the art, and you know, I'm learning about the world as part of what I'm doing for the gameplay, then I'm more likely to like reading. Now, when it comes to like what is story in games, that's a really broad question. And like the fact, you know, this is why you have a job title of narrative design in game studios, which is separate from being a writer. Like the fact that this game has this narrative framing of it happening as a stage show, and the narrator comes out between levels and tells you what's going on in the story, and it has like this frame story of being a stage play, that's all story as well. Those are all narrative decisions of like how what's happening in the game is told and framed. So like I do like that stuff. I care about it. I think you have to be very conscious of when you put writing in your game. And I don't mean the letters that appear on the screen. I mean like someone has decided to put words in the game that could have been something else. You have to be very, very conscious of what type of thing are you inviting people to come and do in your game, and whether reading all of that text goes with that, or whether listening to all those characters talk, even if it's not in text, whether that goes with the rest of it. And so Repose Revitalize, talking about how you make it interesting to the player, right? There's loads of different factors that come into that. you know, actually, I'll read out an interaction I had on the story video the other day because I think this kind of answers it. But you know, how is the story presented? Is it presented as you must know this thing and you have to sit through it? Is it presented as like, sorry, I just inceptioned myself. Is it presented as like a reward because you've completed a section of the game and now you get a cutscene that is interesting in some way and it's short and it's snappy and you learn something cool and it's like presented as a reward for doing well in the game? That's like a different way of thinking about story. And then you think about like how kind of baseline appealing is what's happening in your story in the first place. So I'm going to read this out because I feel like this kind of covers all the bases. But someone in the comments, when I put out a clip video last week that was "Don't let a bad story hurt a good game," and someone asked me, what about the story in Hades? I always found myself excited to open dialogues with all the NPCs. Is that just due to good writing and well-performed voice acting? And like, well, first off, yes, that is a factor. But this was my response. The writing is sassy. It's 30% exposition and 70% banter, right? So when you see the dialogue in Hades, much like when you hear the dialogue in like a Joss Whedon Marvel film, you're hearing sassy, witty characters banter at each other. And what that means, and I know not everyone likes that. I know not everyone likes that kind of sassy Avengers writing. But what it means is that there's something fundamentally enjoyable about witnessing that, even if you don't see the story around it. Because seeing characters be sassy at each other sort of puts you in this situation of like imagining yourself saying that funny thing. So you're seeing an interaction that is enjoyable even if you take it out of the context of the story. And that allows the writing in Hades to function as a reward because it's just fundamentally pleasurable to engage with each scene because of like how these characters generally are, right? And so the focus isn't just on like the focus isn't just on we need to tell you this piece of information about the backstory of the world or what's going to happen. It is exposing the character of these characters in a way that is pleasing to see. And some people go too far in that direction and all of their writing is just character voice and there's no substance to it, and that can be bad in its own right. And some writing, more frequently, the problem with like amateur games writing is it goes in the other direction and it's 100% exposition, and they haven't thought of like the pleasure of overhearing these characters talk or imagining this character is you or any of those types of things. One of the reasons why Hades does so well and why people who maybe don't engage with story games much like the writing in Hades is because it is sassy and it is just a pleasure to imagine these characters being kind of bitchy and catty with each other. It's got this kind of soap opera sort of kind of sassy quality to it. The second one, which should be very obvious, but some people might not detect this because of, you know, some people, this isn't a thing that they kind of see. The characters are hot, right? So Hades isn't just like pieces of story within an action game. It is drawing on the conventions of a dating sim visual novel, and that means that all of the characters are incredibly hot. Whether you personally find them attractive or not, everyone in that game is hot in a particular way. They are all sexual archetypes. And whether you like sort of like lithe, skinny women or big burly dudes or the other way round, there are generally characters that fit all of those sexual archetypes. And even though the character in the game is not necessarily there to interact with them on a romantic or a sexual level, that is the appeal of looking at them. And it ties into this, like, I want to learn about their characters because I want to kind of, you know, I kind of fancy this character and this character and I want to hear more of them speak, which is, you know, a basic human thing that lots of people like. Lots of people try and put sex appeal in games, and it really just boils down to drawing a character they feel is hot, and they don't understand that part of what makes you think people are hot is like how they express themselves and how they talk. So these first 2 points are like inherently tied together if we're going to analyze Hades. And then the third one, interacting with modern interpretations of myth is inherently appealing in a random IP is not. In a way that a random IP is not. You know who most of the characters in Hades are, and you're going to see what the game's interpretation of those things are. And that's probably one of the reasons why the second Hades kind of fell flat for a lot of people. It's kind of like it's already done its trick. And if anything, it probably would have been better for Supermassive. Is it Supermassive? Supergiant. For Supergiant to make the same game and the same premise, but set it in a different mythological setting. Because if they'd have made, like, well, not exactly the same game. Obviously, you do some mechanical tweaks. But if they did a game with the same premise that was Egyptian gods or Norse gods, or just moved on in some way, there would have been a whole new cast of characters to learn, and it would have felt fresh. But they didn't. They kind of set it in the same place and had a bunch of the same stuff. As far as I'm aware, I haven't played the second one, but when I've seen people critiquing it, I think one of the problems with it was that it tried to do the same trick with the same material, and part of the appeal of that trick is that you know the characters already, you know who some of these characters are, you know who Poseidon and Ares and all of these are, and you're seeing an interpretation of those. And this is not the only thing that has done that. We've had lots of pieces of media that are like, what if this was, what if, American gods, stuff like that? What if these gods were in this style of thing? And that means that you're coming to it with an understanding of these kind of public domain characters. And because you're already interested in those characters, you're then excited to see how this team interprets those and puts a spin on them. Most concepts or IPs, when people are making a new IP, they don't have that hook, right? So what is the hook that makes someone interested in your story in the first place at all? And the hook for Hades is, I know these characters from elsewhere. The hook for something like what's the Critical Role cartoon, the like Dungeons and Dragons cartoon, when you see people's like cartoons of Dungeons and Dragons and stuff, there's a format where you understand, oh, there's a rogue and a wizard and stuff. So you're kind of coming to it with a bit of an expectation, and you're excited to see how they interpret that set of tropes or that stock thing. And a lot of the time, I think people kind of get lost in the fantasy of the thing they're trying to do, and they don't really think about what would pull someone into it in the first place. Hades has a very, very clear hook for that sort of thing. The thing I already mentioned about how much of your story is just you must see this to progress versus like making it part of the reward system of the game. In Hades, it's very like tied into you're getting a specific reward when you speak to a specific character, which makes it all feel like it's pushing in the same direction. The story isn't taking you away from something. It might be delaying your action a little bit, but it also gives you a break from the combat as well, which you need, and you might not know that you need. And there's all sorts of things to do with pacing in action games, like when you play Vampire Survivors and you open a chest and it takes ages to go da 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 da. People will say, oh, that's a slot machine thing. That's to make you excited. And it is also gives you a little bit of a psychological break from being overwhelmed. And then when everything comes back in, it feels like you've had a change. So there's all of these different things to do with the pacing, how things are positioned structurally within the game. And I think fundamentally it comes down to stepping back from what's the story that I want to tell with this game into how does story structurally fit into what the player is doing in this game. And if you've got a game where you're going around collecting clues for a mystery and you're like taking notes on them or something, that's a particular game structure that types of content can fall into. And, if you think about the way that Phoenix Wright games work, where you have an investigation bit, you talk to various characters, and then there's a courtroom, the content of the story fits into all these little mini game structures, and that makes it very easy for the game and the story to not be fighting each other. Yeah. So that's that. I feel like, but yeah, I mean, it's not that story is bad in games or that I don't think games are good at story. I think that story is an element of games that is often thought about and added into games in a way that is so badly done that it gets in the way of the game. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't try it, but if you're sending a game to me with the explicit goal of getting feedback on the game design, which is what Indies Under the Knife is supposed to be, and I have to wade through loads and loads of story, the impression that I often get is that you haven't spent enough time on the gameplay before you've added the story in. Right? So if you're making an action game or a strategy game or a tactics game or a puzzle game, and you haven't spent lots of time iterating on the core gameplay, and you've already decided to put a story in it, that's lots and lots of red flags, because it means you're kind of rushing towards this final form of the game that you've imagined, with all of these different parts in, story being one of them, all of the other gameplay parts in being another. And what you should have done is kind of work out the core game, refine it loads and loads and loads before you decide to make the rest of the game. And then if you want to develop a story, do that in another document, write a script, plan the story, but don't put the story into the game until you know that the game is working. And often I'll get a game through where the game needs loads of work and it's not in a state yet where it should have a story, and yet I'm being blocked from doing a playtest and like telling you about the game mechanics and analyzing the game mechanics because you put loads of story in the game. And this just happens a lot, and it's because people have a sense of what the full game looks like, and my game has these 8 parts, and there'll be, this part is levels, this part is story, this part is the economy, and they see all the parts that a game should have, a tutorial, and they just start doing all of them to try and push everything towards this 100% complete bar. And that's not really how you make a game. You design the activity of what the player is doing, and then from there you go, okay, well, what sort of systems and content do we need to support this activity and make it like a longer thing that people want to do for a longer time? And what's our emotional goal? Is this horror? Is it meant to tell a story that makes people think about like emotions and people and stuff? Is it meant to be like a skill-based game that allows people to feel skillful and triumphant? You work out all of these things and you gradually build it out after you've really determined what that core of the game is. And I just tend to find that people's desire to tell a story gets in the way of them becoming good game designers, because they're too focused on putting every part of a game into a game as quickly as possible. So that's where a lot of that stuff comes from. Sorry to ramble, but there's just a lot of things to unpack. There's a lot of layers in there of why people make games with bad story, or why people approach story in a way that maybe doesn't work. I don't know what SN Box is. I don't have time to try every tool that comes out. I still use Game Maker because I know how to use it, so I don't have any thoughts on it. Is it going to be an AI tool? Am I gonna be disappointed with you? Oh, it's the new Gary's mod type thing. Ah, I didn't know that was what it was called. No, I haven't had a chance to use it. Maybe we need to have a goofing around stream making some stuff in it. Yeah, I saw people getting upset by the potato guys. Yeah, I think just having a day messing around in this would be great. One of the things I've been meaning to do that I haven't got around to, that I really, really want to do on this channel, and I don't know when I'll start doing it because it's time consuming. But, like I said earlier, when the channel grows a bit and I can pay people to do other things for me, like scheduling and editing and stuff, then I might be able to do this. But I really want to do like a monthly feature or something where we just dig into an unusual game engine for a little while. And it could be something like this. Could be an old text engine like Inform or ZZT, or one of the various ones for making ASCII roguelikes. I would love to just be able to regularly put out a video just saying like, I spent like almost like an internal game jam. Maybe we could even do that in the Indie Game Clinic Discord of just having a, maybe it's every 2 or 3 months, like a mini short 2-day game jam that's just like, here is a game engine that no one uses. What can you make in it in 2 days? And because I want to try these things out. I want to try out the new, you know, Gary's Mod equivalent and stuff like that. Just don't get time. So unless I have a specific thing to do it for, like a jam or a piece of content, then I just won't get round to it, and that's a shame because I would like to make stuff with this. Yeah, I would love to check that out sometime soon. Yeah, maybe that can be a thing we do. Maybe it's like a few times a year do a 2-day game jam where it's like, what can you make with this tool? Right, folks, I'm gonna log off for the day. Hope you have a great one. Good luck with whatever you're working on now or over the weekend or whenever you get a chance to work on it. Thank you all for watching. I definitely enjoyed the word game more than the typing game. I'm sad we didn't get to play the second typing game. I thought the first one was great, but just needs to do a little bit more to kind of not feel like it's kind of black and white to cut corners, you know? See you all soon.